Hey guys, I'm Joel with North Country Vans. Welcome back to another build video. In this one we're going to do a little opposite. I'm going to show you the finished product and then how I built it. But we're going to look at drawer latches today. So I've used many different drawer latches building vans, everything from the little hasp style, magnets, the push button, or the bolt style. They all have their pluses and minuses. But in this van I wanted something kind of unique. So I built these, and these latches operate as the handle and the latch. So right now it's locked. If I slide that latch over, the door is unlocked. And I've done this for our doors and our drawers. So I'll show you how to build them if you want, and follow along. Alright, so to start, I have one of the drawers in the van, and it's made with 1/2-inch plywood on the sides, face, and back. And the idea is we want to router in a 1/4-inch groove, a 1/4-inch deep groove in the face of this, so that we can recess a piece of 1/4-inch plywood as a tongue or a latch. And when we move the latch, it'll extend out the side here, and it'll engage the side of the cabinets, the cabinet sides. Sorry. So to start out with, we got to build a template. Now, I like to build my templates out of MDF. This is 3/4-inch MDF. It cuts really easy. You can shape it well, and it holds its shape. It's resistant to moisture changes, etc. And the width of this, or the width of the opening, is 2 1/4 inches wide. Now you'll need to adjust the length of it so that your opening is at least half of the width of your drawer, plus 4 3/4. You want that latch to extend a little bit past the opening. We'll get into that in a little while. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 3/4 inches down on the face here. I want that latch to be kind of near the top of the drawer, but put it wherever you want. So I'm just going to mark a couple 3/4 inch lines. Like so. And I'm just going to hit those with a pencil so I can see them. Alright. Then I need to find out the width of my drawer. This is 27 1/8. So I need to take half of that plus 4 3/4. And I'm going to cheat. I've written down 17 5/16. Alright. I'm going to mark that down. And then line up my template. Alright. And in your application, you might be just polyurethane the face of it, so you don't want to put any screw holes through, so you just clamp it. In mine, I'm going to end up putting Formica over it, so I'm not too concerned. So I'm going to screw it right to the face. And if you're going to screw it, just make sure that your screws aren't protruding into your drawer. You'll have to fix them later. Now you want to make sure to recess those screws in. You don't want your router to ride on top of them, create humps and stuff. So just double check. We're good. Next, I'm going to take a router, and I have a pattern bit in here, and it extends just a little bit more than a 1/4 inch past that MDF. And I want it to extend just a little bit, so I have a little slop in there. Otherwise, if you're right there at a 1/4 inch, your latch won't slide easily. So I'm going to router this out. It's going to create a bunch of dust, so I'm going to mask up.
And then I'm going to make a pass around the outside of that template in the interior here. And then I'll work my way, slowly carving away all the meat in the middle.
All right, and then just double check. Take a piece of 1/4 inch, put it in there, and make sure you feel a little lip. Let you know that 1/4 inch is recessed all the way down there. And yeah, that's how it turns out. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a quick sand and just knock down any of those little high spots raised by the screws or the staples. Here it is we're now going to glue our actual face onto the drawer here. And then I've left this a little bit bigger than the actual drawer face. That way I can come back with a pattern bit, or sorry, a flush trim bit, and I can nip off the edges and get it so it lines up perfectly with that face on the bottom of it. All right, and what I'm doing here is I want to make sure that I don't put any staple holes or any staples through where I routed out. So I'm just doing a couple quick measurements so I know where that groove is underneath here, just in case. And then I'm just using 1/2 inch deep staples so that way I'm not penetrating in through the back side. We'll let the glue dry on this, and then we'll come back through with our flush trim bit and just trim off the excess of this face here. Welcome back to day number 2 of building the latches for these drawers. So I've gone ahead and used a flush trim bit, and I've trimmed off that 1/4 inch face panel that we put on here. And now I'm going to router in the opening for the latch assembly. Now this is pretty key. Whatever shape you're going to use, so you could use a square, a rectangle like I am, an oval, whatever you want to do. It needs to be very, very precise. So take your time when you build your template. And then what I've done is on the back side of it, I've scored a couple lines with my table saw to give me the exact center of both sides here. And that way I can find the center point where I need that latch, draw a couple lines, and I can adjust that template exactly where I want. You don't want that opening to be kind of cockeyed like that, and it's not going to slide back and forth. It's going to look goofy. So try to keep it as precise as you can. So the first step I'm going to do is I need to find the exact center of this drawer. So if I measure, I am 18 1/4. So 18 1/4 is going to be 9 1/8. I'm going to take a square, draw a center line right down the center of my drawer. All right. Now the opening for my latch assembly is 2 inches by 5 1/2. So my latch starts, or the tongue starts, 3/4 of an inch down. My latch is 2 1/4, so I'm going to split that difference. So I have to come 7/8 of an inch down, plus 1/2 of this, which is going to be another inch, so 1 inch and 7/8. I'll measure down. Keep that tape measure square. In fact, I think I'm just going to use my square so we get a nice, accurate measurement. And end of that pencil lead. There we go. So 1 inch, 7/8. Make a mark. 1 inch and 7/8. Boom. Take a straight edge and connect those. There we go. Again, be very precise when you're doing this. All right, so that right there is exactly where I want that latch. Next, I'm going to take my template with the score marks, like it right there. And again, if you're going to end up staining and polyurethane the face of this, you won't want to screw this template down, clamp it, to build a little bigger template to count for those clamps. But for me, we're going to glue some Formica on it, and that's going to be good. Alright, so I start that screw in there, and then I'm going to give it a whack. Just start that screw, and we'll attach it. Go ahead and make sure you're still lined up good. Right there. Okay. Start your next screw. That's nice and lined up. And then on my templates, I like to put multiple screw holes in, just in case if I knock it out of position when I first go to attach it, if I reuse those same holes, I'll never get it into a good position. So I can just adjust to different holes just in case I make a mistake. All right. Next, we're going to use a pattern bit. And then I have this bit set to a little bit past 1/4 inch beyond this 3/4 inch MDF, and that'll just get me through the face ply that we put on the drawer here. Well, I'm gonna say that's looking good. We got another 5 more drawers to go. With our drawers done, the next thing we need to do is build our handles. So I have another template, and this is 5 inches wide. Remember, the opening is 5.5, so this gives us a 1/2 inch play side by side by just a touch under 2 inches. And that'll give me just a little bit of wiggle room up and down so it doesn't bind. And then my opening here is 3 3/4 inches wide by 1 inch. And then I've gone ahead and I've edge glued a bunch of Baltic birch together. This is what we're going to use for the drawer handles, and this is 1/2 inch thick. I think this will look pretty handsome. Next, I'm going to lay out on my board this template. I'm just going to trace around the areas that I need to remove. And I've left my my Baltic birch here a touch wider or taller than the handle, so I have a little bit to remove. And I just need the outline for it. And I'm going to leave just over, probably 3/4 of an inch between one handle to the next, and that'll give me a little bit of room to run my router bit in there. And I don't want to separate these until the very last step. I kind of want to keep all of these handles together in on one board. That'll make it easier for me for clamping, etc. And then as you're doing this, you can use any wood that you want. But for me, I need to be kind of careful on where I'm going to put these handles at, because in some areas I'm going to have a couple voids like this. You can see where it gets kind of odd. I don't want to use that. That's something that I want to remove. And then I only need, 7 handles? I'm going to make a couple extra just in case something happens to one of them. Kind of nice to have some spares. Now I'm using a 1/2 inch diameter Forstner bit so I can get nice and close to where those lines are for that inner handle. I can cut the rest out with a jigsaw, but when I use my router bit, I want to remove as much material beforehand as I can so I don't have to really push it or make that router bit work exceedingly hard on this stuff. So I got to drill all these out, and then we'll start jigsawing. What we're going to do next is router out the opening for our handles. But before I do that, I have an arrow on my template. I'm going to mark that on my board because we're going to have to put this template on our handle multiple times. So I want to make sure I get everything lined up exactly. Now, these holes here where I have the screws in, these are going to be the mounting screws to mount the handle on the slider. And what I'm going to do is line that template up there and make sure that I haven't drilled too far to where that handle goes. And then I'm just going to press down on those screws to create an indentation. I don't want to screw those screws right in here right now because I'll end up splitting those layers of plywood apart. So I want to mark them first, and then I'll take them on the drill press and put a pilot hole in there. I'll just go ahead and do that for all of them on here. Now we're going to use a pattern bit to router out the interior of this handle, and I have this bit set to go all the way through my 1/2 inch Baltic birch, and then I have a couple spacers here so I'm not gouging into my table. Well, now that's unfortunate. Man, you just can't win for losing around here some days. Next, we're going to take a 45-degree bevel in the router. We're going to flip our handles over, and we're going to carve out that 45-degree angle here, and that'll give us a little bit of room to put our fingers in and grab it. Now in this step, I'm going to remove quite a bit of material. So typically, you would router in a clockwise rotation. So that way the blade is coming around and cutting like this. I'm going to go opposite of that, counterclockwise. It's a little dangerous though, because if you're not careful, that router bit can grab and throw the router on you. Instead of you feeding that work into the router bit, you're essentially allowing that router bit climb on top of that work. So just be careful when you're doing stuff like this. And that's what you should end up with. So I used a power miter box and cut free all of these, leaving a little bit of extra there. And then we built a little jig for the table saw. And what this does is, if you look, the bottom board here actually goes in a little bit. And then the top board is completely in line with that blade. So once I screw my template on there, that template will ride against that top board and allow us to cut and trim the bottom one. With our handles done, we can now start working on the tongues for our latches. So I ripped up a bunch of 1/4 inch plywood that's 2 1/4 inches wide. And if I take a handle and I just stick it right on there, my fingers really don't fit well in there. So I want to put a hole in this latch so my finger can extend further. So you guessed it, we're going to use another template. And this one doesn't have to be very precise. You're not going to see that tongue or the hole in the tongue very much, so don't be too stressed about it. But this hole is going to be 3 3/4 by 1.5 inches. And then on the back side of this, You can see where I've dadoed out a little trap, and that'll just help me align it on there. So what I'm going to do is trace out the opening and then rough cut it with a jigsaw, go back through the pattern bit, and we'll knock that out. And then the last step we'll do is on the edge here, we'll round that off with a belt sander so it fits into where those router bits created that 1/2 inch round whatever. So the drawers are installed, and the next thing we have to do is cut our notch on this side for that tongue to fit into. So what we're going to do is take some masking tape and put that on that edge, just so I'm not marking up the finish. Next, I've taken our tongues and I've brought them down to just 1 inch here, and then kind of sanded it and beveled a little bit just so it slips into that groove a little easier. That way, if you had the whole width of it trying to go in that slot, it would have to be just absolutely perfectly aligned. This allows you just a little bit of slot. So next, I'm going to install those. Oh, come on, there we go. Here's D1. Then we open up the drawer, slide that tongue out, put it on there, and then I'm going to rock that tongue all the way up, put a mark, push that tongue down, put a mark. Go ahead and do those for all the drawers. So I've taken the drawers out along with the sliders so I don't get sawdust in them. And then I'm going to mark on the interior here how far I need to router in that groove. And I'm going to go about 1/8 of an inch past my marks because that router bit is a 1/4 inch round. I want to make sure I can get a 1/4 inch wide slot at least up to that groove. So go a little bit wider than what you've marked. So I made a little jig that allows me to set how far in from that edge that router bit's going to ride. So I have it set for the correct distance, which if you're going to put Formica on it, just be careful that you're including the distance of that Formica. And this one is going to be tough because I really can't see in there very well. There we go. Okay, be careful when you're doing this. And that's what we're going for. So now for the fun part, the final assembly after playing around with these for so long. Now, when I cut this opening into the face here, I actually went deeper than where that tongue rides. And the reason why is I took some Formica, I cut it so that it'll fit in there. And it's a little warped, which is good for what we want because, there we go, it puts a little bit of tension on that tongue. So next, where are you? There you are. These screws are painted flat black to match everything, so I'm being real careful I don't scratch them. Alright. So now, with this latch pushed all the way in the back, the drawer opens up nicely. can latch it and the drawer stays shut.